What if that is the key? What if we don't have the level of success that we desire because we're not capable of handling the level of success that we desire? What if that could be true? The thing that you're trying to do is going to teach you more about yourself than anything else. You'll learn about speaking. You'll learn about communication, interviewing, social media, marketing, sales, influence, psychology, perception, right? All of that stuff. But you're going to learn more about you than anything else. And that's just something I wish I knew earlier. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode number 136. We talked about the results of our 30-day ad test. Hopefully you got some value from that. Today, for episode number 137, a deep lesson every podcaster needs to hear. I just got off of a coaching call with one of our amazing clients. I've referenced her in the past. She is the client who knows her audience super, super well. And essentially every week she is getting clients from her podcast. Again, have I helped her make some shifts and some pivots? Yes. Most of her success is based on her knowledge as much as it is more than mine, honestly. I just think that's the fair thing to say, and I think that's something that most people just wouldn't admit to, but I don't know. It's important to me to be honest. But she is somebody who is very confident and very capable and has accolades and awards and has done industry first and is the top of the top in the industry. Just very successful, very competent, very skilled. But this podcast journey for her has taught her more about herself than anything else. And I think that's the deep lesson that every podcaster needs to hear. This is not just about speaking, and it's not just about interviewing people and getting guests and building a community and staying consistent. I think one of the missing pieces is you're going to learn more about yourself than anything else when it comes to this journey. The longer you do it, the more you're going to learn about yourself if you're really focused on growth and evolution and you want to be authentic and you don't want to sell out. You want to be you. You want to do this the way that you want to do it. You're going to learn a ton about yourself. I had a moment right before recording this episode where I thought to myself, is this episode going to matter to a lot of podcasters? I think it's deeply important. I wish I knew this going in. I didn't know how much it was going to take a toll on me personally and working on confidence and being more courageous and imposter syndrome and facing my fears and all that stuff. I didn't know all of that was going to be a requirement. And then I had this moment where I thought to myself, honestly, I want to be the podcast that talks about the internal struggles as much as the external struggles. I want to do this episode. And at that moment for me was a learning moment. The learning moment of I don't necessarily want to do it the way other podcasts about podcasts are doing it. Nothing against them. That's just not who I am. We're different. We're different. I'm different than they are, and they're different than I am. And of course, the content I produce is going to be different than them. But I have kind of felt myself feeling guilty for not doing episodes the same way other people have in this space. And even 3,000 podcast episodes in between our shows and guest spots, I'm still taking away lessons about me. Still, to this day, every day, almost every time I do an episode, there's a new lesson. And I just think that's really important because what if, stick with me for a second, what if the reason that you aren't more successful with your podcast is because you're not working on yourself enough? Artwork, love it. Branding, awesome. New intro, new outro, keywords, 10-word description, 25 problems, 25 buzzwords, awesome. Those are all tactical strategies. But your podcast is most likely not going to grow beyond you and what you're capable of in terms of facing your fears and courage and all that stuff. So that was my thought for today's episode. I think we see people who have the results that we want, and we assume that we'll feel a certain way when we get there. or we'll feel the way that they feel, or if we were in their position, we would feel this way. And I just think it's different when you get there because there's an accumulation of lessons that occur along the way. So here's my thought. Here's my simplest thought for this episode. If you're struggling and you don't feel good enough, you don't feel smart enough, you don't feel like you're a good enough interviewer, you don't feel like you're a good enough speaker, you don't feel like you're great at social media, whatever. If you don't feel good enough in some way, shape, or form, I would suggest that that is a representation of possible growth internally. Okay? If you already feel like you're amazing and you wonder why your show isn't more successful and you think everybody should hear it, I also think that's a really good opportunity for some internal growth, because neither of those are true to the depth that maybe you think they are. You're probably more capable than you think you are. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you probably have more work to do than you want to admit. And that's okay. Those are both really, really good good opportunities, at least, for growth. There is room for growth there. So going back to talking about the client that I had a conversation with today, I said, you know what's interesting? It seems to me like some of the outliers for your episodes, the ones that have done the best, are the ones where you kind of talk about yourself in the title. Not to an arrogant, egotistical place, but you are essentially telling the audience you're going to talk about yourself a little bit in this. And I said, the thing that's really interesting about that is those are the episodes you like doing the least because they require the most courage. What if that's the key? What if that is the key? What if we don't have the level of success that we desire because we're not capable of handling the level of success that we desire? What if that could be true? So again, I know this is like a different episode maybe than normal because this is kind of like a self-improvement episode. But that's kind of who I am. That's really who I am. If you've heard me talk about consistency and that type of stuff, yeah, that's podcasting, but that's self-improvement. A lot of the things I like to talk about are just deeper than surface level tips and tricks and stuff like that. Because I think that's really what matters long term. Okay, so why do I want to talk about this? The client that I talked to today, by all outside standards, is wildly successful as a podcaster. They are on the top 200 in a dozen countries, at least, if not more, probably more, honestly. But they're in the US, Canada, Spain, Switzerland, lots of places, but US and Canada being two of the biggest markets. And they're still going through internal stuff. And if they want to get to the next level, they're going to have to keep going through internal stuff. And they're going to have to work through the internal stuff. The external stuff is only half the battle. Staying consistent, awesome. Right? Titling episodes, awesome. That's all super important. But I think it's easy to miss. None of that really matters unless you're working on yourself. Because even if you did get the level of success that you wanted, it might not fill the gap that you think it's going to. I've said this before, and please don't villainize me for saying it because I don't mean it in that way. Last year at some point, I think it was a random Wednesday, we crossed 1 million listens and $1 million in the business over the life of the business. And a lot of people were like, well, that must have been awesome. That must have been the best day ever. Honestly, it was kind of underwhelming because I thought I would be in a certain place when we crossed that threshold and we're just in a different place. Not that we're not in a great place, not that things aren't going well. I just think I had done a lot of work on myself since the beginning of this journey, so the million and the million didn't mean the same to me. It didn't mean that I was successful. It didn't mean that I had accomplished it just didn't mean what I thought it was going to mean. I'm very proud of what we've done. Incredibly proud. It's probably the thing that I'm most proud of in my life, honestly. I mean, that's something I've had the opportunity to be a massive part of and build, right? I get to live my dreams. I'm super grateful. And it's probably the thing I'm most proud of. It was just different than I expected. But I think it's easy for you to say, well, if I got to 1 million in a million, I would feel completely different. I don't know if you would. Maybe you'd feel different than you think. I just don't think it's the end all be all. Because you're going to learn so much about yourself. By the time you get there, it might not matter as much as it once did from a vanity standpoint.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tarryn McCarthy, and I'm host of the Business of Happiness podcast. When I met Kevin and Alan 2 years ago, I had no idea of how much impact they would have not only on the success for my business, but also on my life. They've given me enormous perspective and true strategies, true tactics to take in my everyday business plan and in my life plan to make an even greater success. Kevin and Alan, thank you so much. I couldn't even begin to express my gratitude for all you've done for me. And if you're looking for similar mentorship, I highly recommend these incredible experts at the Next Level University.
I'm still proud of the impact, and I'm still grateful we've been able to pour into so many people's lives, because that's where all that money came from, right? We don't do ads. We don't do sponsorships. I just started talking about affiliates on this podcast. We don't do that with NLU. That's all adding value to people's lives. That's what I'm most proud of. It's different than I thought. Because I think the deepest lesson every podcaster, probably every content creator, maybe anybody who's trying to do something public-facing, is the thing that you're trying to do is going to teach you more about yourself than anything else. You'll learn about speaking. You'll learn about communication, interviewing, social media, marketing, sales, influence, maybe psychology, perception, right? All of that stuff. But you're going to learn more about you than anything else. And that's just something I wish I knew earlier. Will this episode be a giant flop that nobody likes? Maybe. But I also think it might be one of the most valuable episodes I ever do. Yeah, it's different. And maybe there's no tactical takeaways. One, if you are struggling internally, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't mean that, right? If you have your own mental health struggles, then maybe the pressure of this isn't for you. I don't know. But I will tell you that oftentimes when people are asking me about the journey, they're saying, take me through some of the times you were struggling the most. Most of the times I was struggling at the deepest level, it was internal. Yeah, I was broke, and that didn't help. But most of it was imposter syndrome. Not being smart enough, not feeling smart enough. I won't say not being smart enough. Not feeling smart enough, not feeling good enough. Feeling like I didn't deserve this, feeling like I didn't belong here, feeling like all of that stuff. That was the hardest part for me, at least. Maybe it's not for you. But if it is, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, and it doesn't mean you can't make it. But you're going to have to work on yourself as much as you work on your podcast. You're going to have to work on yourself as much as you work on your social media. I have met people behind the scenes who are massive on social media. Huge followings, very successful, very well known. They worked more on their social medias than they worked on themselves. And when you get behind the scenes with them, it shows. And I'm telling you, they're not as fulfilled as you think. I don't want that for you. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to be fulfilled, really happy. Now again, life has a way of knocking us down. It's going to do that. But I want you to be fulfilled. That's the difference. When we crossed 1 million in a million, I thought I thought I was going to be like super successful. And I don't even know what that meant. I don't even know what I was quantifying that as. You know what I was way more than I thought? Fulfilled. I wasn't even thinking of fulfillment in the beginning. I was thinking of arbitrary measurements, 1 million in a million. Ooh, awesome. Now, still great, right? If you just got your first 10 listens, your first 100 listens, your first 1,000 listens, awesome. That's very important. But just know that number is not going to change the way you feel about you. But the way you change the way that you feel about you will change the way that the numbers affect you. And that is my goal in today's episode. So if this episode sucked and you didn't like it, my apologies. And I think this is important. I really do. Your growth might be different. I have recognized in a lot of people that their growth is just leaning into who they are more. And I think it's kind of everybody's at the end of the day. That's kind of the biggest struggle. The thing that we aspire to the most, maybe to be ourselves, might be one of the hardest things on the planet. I challenge you to keep doing it. I challenge you to keep doing it because I think it's worth it. And I think that's where fulfillment is. And I think that's where success is as well. I think that's where everything lies. So keep doing the work. And most likely, your podcast, your business, your social media, your YouTube, whatever it is most likely not going to grow any larger than you are. And I'll say, it most likely won't grow larger than the amount of work you've done on yourself. And even if it does, it's going to be like a massive balloon that you might not be able to handle yet. It might pull you off into space. And I don't want to go to space. I like it here. I like it here on the ground. All right. Rant over. TED Talk over. I appreciate you sitting through that if you did. That's new for me. I want to be the podcast that talks as much about external tactics and strategies as much as I talk about internal fears, mindset, blocks, that type of stuff. I might even change the intro. Next week, the intro might be different. We're going to see. I don't know. But this is evolution, and this is what we all go through. We all go through stuff like this. So all the permission in the world, not that you need it from me, but maybe you need it from yourself, all the permission in the world to grow, do things that are uncomfortable, and lean into the outer edges of, I think I want to be this, but I don't know yet. Okay? All right, cool. If anything I said in this episode was of any value at all, number one, awesome. Number two, you want to dig deeper into that place of value, I will have my link in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. I think that's the interesting thing that I try to bring is I am a podcaster and a podcast coach who has spent 8 years doing podcasts on self-improvement. So there's a lot of different angles that I think I try to take just based on the experiences that I've had. And I'm trying to lean more into that. If I'm going to talk to you about leaning more into who you are, I want to lead by example. And sometimes that's scary, but sometimes the scariest things are the most worth it. So my link will be in the show notes for that. Also, this is something cool that I want to share with you. Again, no pressure ever. I'm never going to, I'll say this. I'm going to do my best never, ever, ever to oversell anything. That's not how I like to do things. Have I done that in the past? Probably, yeah, especially when I first started, but that's my goal not to. But at Next Level University, we have group coaching. So right now, we have our 17th round of group coaching. And every single round, every group has been at least 10 people. This group has 12 people. The first 15 groups were all about mindset and peak performance and habits and money and relationships and all that stuff. The last two groups, so group 16 and current group 17, are podcasting. So we have 6 sessions total. The first 2 sessions are Level Up Yourself, where we talk about habit building and consistency and self-belief and self-worth. The second 2 sessions that I lead are purely podcasting. So we talk about podcasting, monetization strategies, all this stuff, a bunch of stuff. You've heard me talk about it. We talk about it at a deeper level. The second session is an even deeper dive into like building the business of the podcast. And then the 5th session and the 6th session that Alan lead are very business-like. So how do you actually turn the podcast into a business? Let's learn a little bit about business, how we did this. We'll take you behind the scenes. If that's something that is of interest to you, reach out to me. We have a group going right now, and we're 3 weeks in, so we're halfway through. But there's going to be another group starting in a month or so. So if that's something that's interesting to you, reach out because I can put you on a list. If you're listening to this and maybe right now money's tight and it's not, I can't have a production team, I can't pay for one-on-one coaching, I don't have money for courses, whatever it is, with the discount code I can give you, I think it ends up being $96 a month. So you're going to get 2 coaching calls for that $96. And then on the off weeks, there's connection calls with Amy, our assistant coach. And those calls are designed for you to meet other podcasters. You're going to meet the people in the group. But yeah, you're not going to feel alone. You're going to be hanging out with other podcasters. So that's something I'll throw out there. You can DM me. You can email me, kevin@nextleveluniverse.com, whatever. If it's something that interests you, I'm very, very proud of that program. It's been awesome so far. I've gotten a ton of really good feedback from the attendees. Somebody's doing a rebrand right now in the middle of it based on what we talked about last time. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. So if this podcast resonates with you, it's a deeper dive into that. Okay, cool. All right. I hope that you're doing the work on yourself as much as you're doing the work on the product. That is all I hope for based on today's episode. As always, keep on podcasting, keep on crushing it, and I will talk to you all next week.